Okay, y'all, so I'm sad to start the chapter over again because it cut off for some reason. But although there was evening brightness showing through the windows of the bunkhouse, inside it was dusk. Through the open door came the thuds and occasional clangs of a horseshoe game, and now and then the sound of voices raised in approval or derision. Slim and George came into the darkening bunkhouse together. Slim reached up over the card table and turned on the tin-shaded electric light. Instantly the table was brilliant with light, and the cone of the shade threw its brightness straight downward, leaving the corners of the bunkhouse still in dusk. Slim sat down on a box, and George took his place opposite. "It wasn't nothing," said Slim. "I would have had to drown most of 'em anyways. No need to thank me about that." George said, "It wasn't much to you, maybe, but it was a hell of a lot to him. Jesus Christ, I don't know how we're going to get him to sleep in here. He'll want to sleep right out on the barn with them. We'll have trouble keeping him from getting right in the box with them pups." "It wasn't nothing," Slim repeated. "Say you were sure was right about him. Maybe he ain't bright, but I never seen such a worker. He damn near killed his partner, bucking barley. There ain't nobody can keep up with him. God almighty, I never seen such a strong guy." George spoke proudly. "Just tell Lenny what to do and he'll do it if it don't take no figuring. He can't think of nothing to do himself, but he can sure take orders." There was a clang of horseshoe on iron stake outside and a little cheer of voices. Slim moved back slightly so the light was not on his face. "Funny how you and him string along together." It was Slim's calm invitation to confidence. "What's funny about it?" George demanded defensively. "Oh, I don't know. Hardly none of the guys ever traveled together. I hardly never seen two guys travel together. You know how the hands are. They just come in and get their bunk and work a month, and then they quit and go out alone. Never seem to give a damn about nobody. It just seems kind of funny a cuckoo like him and a smart little guy like you traveling together." "He ain't no cuckoo," said George. "He's dumb as hell, but he ain't crazy. And I ain't so bright neither. I would have been bucking barley for my 50 and found if I was bright. If I was even a little bit smart, I'd have my own little place and I'd be bringing in my own crops instead of doing all the work and not getting what comes up out of the ground." George felt silent. He wanted to talk. Slim neither encouraged nor discouraged him. He was just sat back quiet and receptive. "It ain't so funny, him and me going around together." Oh, he's gonna tell him his business. George said at last, "Him and me was both born in Auburn. I knowed his Aunt Clara. She took him when he was a baby and raised him up. When his Aunt Clara died, then he just come along with me, out working. Got kind of used to each other after a little while." Said Slim. George looked over at Slim and saw the calm, godlike eyes fastened on him. "Funny," said George. I used to have a hell of a lot of fun with him. Used to play jokes on him because he was too dumb and to take care of himself, but he was too dumb even to know he had a joke played on him. I had fun. Maybe made me seem goddamn smart alongside of him. Why, he'd do any damn thing I told him. If I told him to walk over a cliff, over he'd go. That wasn't so damn much fun after a while. He never got mad about it, neither. I beat the hell out of him, and he could have bust every bone in my body just with his hands, but he never lifted a finger against me." George's voice was taking on the tone of confession. "Tell you what made me stop that. One day a bunch of guys was standing around up on the Sacramento River. I was feeling pretty smart. I turns to Lenny, says, 'Jump in,' and he jumps. Couldn't swim a stroke. He damn near drowned before we could get to him, and he was so damn nice to me for pulling him out. Clean forgot I told him to jump in. Well, I ain't done nothing like that no more." "He's a nice fella," says Slim. "Guy don't need no sense to be a nice fella. Seems to me sometimes it just works the other way around. Take a real smart guy, he ain't hardly ever a nice fella." George stacked the scattered cards and began to lay out his solitaire hand. The shoes thudded on the ground outside. At the windows, the light of the evening still made the window squares bright. "I ain't got no people," George said. "I seen the guys that go around on the ranches alone. That ain't no good. They don't have no fun. After a long time, they get mean. They get wasting, wanting to fight all the time." "Yeah, they get mean," Slim agreed. They get so they don't want to talk to nobody. Of course, Lenny's goddamn nuisance most of the time," said George. "But if you get used to going around with the guy, you can get rid of him." And okay, if you get used to going around with the guy, you can't get rid of him. "He ain't mean," said Slim. "I can see Lenny ain't a bit mean. Of course he ain't mean, but he gets in trouble all the time because he's so goddamn dumb. Like what happened in Weed. He stopped in the middle of turning over a card. He looked alarmed and peered over at Slim. "He wouldn't tell nobody." "What do you do in Weed?" Slim asked calmly. "You wouldn't tell. And of course you wouldn't." "What do you do in Weed?" Slim asked again. "Well, he's seen this girl in a red dress. Dumb bastard like he is, he wants to touch everything he likes, just wants to feel it, so he reaches out to feel his red dress, and the girl lets out a squawk, and that gets Lenny all mixed up. And he holds on to the cause because that's the only thing he can think to do. Well, this girl squawks and squawks. I was just a little bit off, and I heard all the yelling, so I comes running. And by that time, Lenny's so scared, all he could think to do was just hold on. I socked him over the head with the fence picket to make him let go. He was so scared he couldn't let go of that dress, and he's so goddamn strong, you know." Slim eyes were level and unwinking. He nodded very slowly. "So what happens?" George carefully built his line of solitaire cards. "While the girl rabbits in and tells the law she's been raped, the guys in Weeds start a party out to lynch Lenny, so we sit in an irrigation ditch under the water all the rest of that day. Got only our heads sticking out from the side of the ditch, and that night we scrammed out of there. Slim sat in silence for a moment. Didn't hurt the girl none, huh? He asked family, finally. Hell no, he just scared her. I'd be scared too if he grabbed me, but he never hurt her. He just wanted to touch that red dress like he wants to pet them pups all the time. He ain't mean, said Slim. I could tell a mean guy a mile off. Of course he ain't. He'll do any damn thing. Then he came in through the door. He wore his blue denim coat over his shoulders like a cape, and he walked hunched way over. Hi, Lenny, said George. How do you like the pup now? Lenny said breathlessly. He's brown and white just like I wanted. He went directly to his bunk and lay down and turned his face to the wall and drew up his knees. George put down his cards very deliberately. Lenny, he said sharply. Then he twisted his neck and looked over his shoulder. Huh, what you want, George? I told you wouldn't bring that pup in here. What pup, George? I ain't got no pup. George went quickly to him, grabbed him by the shoulder, and rolled him over. He reached down and picked the tiny puppy from where Lenny had been concealing it against his stomach. Lenny sat up quickly. Give him to me, George. George said, you get right up and take this pup back to the nest. He's got to sleep with his mother. You want to kill him? Just born last night. You take him out of the nest. You take him back, or I'll tell Slim not to let you have him. Lenny held out his hands pleadingly. Give him to me, George. Take him back. I mean no harm, George. Honest, I didn't. I just wanted to put him a little. George handed the pup to him. Pet him a little. All right, you get him back there quick, and don't you take him out no more. You'll kill him the first thing you know. Lenny fairly scuttled out of the room. Slim had not moved. His calm eyes followed Lenny out the door. Jesus, he said, he's just like a kid, ain't he? Sure, he's just like a kid. There ain't no more harm in him than a kid neither, except he's so strong. I bet he won't come in here to sleep tonight. He sleep right alongside that box in the barn. Well, let him. He ain't doing no harm out there. It was almost dark outside now. Old Candy, the swamper, came in and went to his bunk, and behind him struggled his old dog. Hello, Slim. Hello, George. Didn't neither of you play horseshoes? I like to play every night, said Slim. Kenny went on, either you guys got a slug of whiskey, I got a gut ache. I ain't Slim. I'll drink it to myself if I had, and I ain't got a gut ache neither. Got a bad gut ache, said Kenny. Them damn turnips give it to me. I know they was going to before I ever eat them. The thick-bodied Carlson came in out of the darkening yard. He walked to the other end of the bunkhouse and turned on the second shaded light. Dark in hell here, he said. Jesus, how that N-word can pitch shoes. He's plenty good, said Slim. I said, gosh, how he can pitch shoes then? He plays plenty good, said Slim. Damn right he is, said Carlson. He don't give nobody else a chance to win. He stopped and sniffed the air and still sniffing, looked down at the old dog. God almighty, that dog stinks. Get him out of here, Kenny. I don't know nothing that stinks as bad as an old dog. You got to get him out. Kenny rolled the edge of his bunk. He reached over and patted the ancient dog, and he apologized. I've been around him so much, I never noticed how he stinks. Well, I can't stand him in here, said Carlson. That stink hangs around even after he's gone. He walked over with his heavy-legged stride and looked down at the dog. Got no teeth. He said he's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't got no good to you. He ain't no good to you, Candy, and he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy? The old man squirmed uncomfortably. Well, hell, I had him so long. I had him since he was a pup. I heard sheep with him, he said proudly. You wouldn't think it to look at him now, but he was the best damn sheep our dog ever seen, George said. I seen a guy in weed that had an Airedale could herd sheep. Learned it from the other dogs. That's George. I seen a guy in weed that had an Airedale could herd sheep. Learned it from the other dogs. I'm not sure what Airedale is. Carlson was not to be put off. Look, Candy, this old dog just suffers himself all the time. If he was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head, he leaned over and pointed right there while he never know what hit him. Candy looked about unhappily. No, he said softly. No, I couldn't do that. I had him too long. You don't have no fun, Carlson insisted, and he stinks to beat hell. Tell you what, I shoot him for you, then it won't be you that does it. Candy threw his legs off his bunk. He scratched the white stubble whiskers on his cheek nervously. I'm so used to him, he said softly. I had him from a pup. Why you ain't being kind to him, keeping him alive, said Carlson. Look, Slim's bitch got a litter right now. I bet Slim would give you one of them pups to raise up, wouldn't you, Slim? The Skinner had been studying the old dog with his calm eyes. Yeah, he said, you can't have a pup if you want to. He seemed to shake himself free for speech. Carl's right, Candy. The dog ain't no good to himself. I wish somebody shoot me if I got an old and crippled. Candy looked helplessly at him, for Slim's opinion were law. Maybe it hurt him, he suggested. I don't mind taking care of him. Carlson, the way I shoot him, he wouldn't feel nothing. I put the gun right there. He pointed with his toe. Right back of the head. He wouldn't even quiver. Candy looked for help from face to face. It was quite dark outside now. A young laboring man came in. His sloping shoulders were bent forward, and he walked heavily on his heels as though he carried an invisible grain bag. He went to his bunk and put his hat on his shelf. Then he picked up a pulp magazine from his shelf and brought it to the light over the table. Did I show you this, Slim? He asked. Show me what? The young man turned to the back of the magazine, put it on the table, and pointed with his finger. Right there, read that. Slim bent over it. Go on, said the young man. Read out loud. Dear editor, Slim read slowly. I read your mag for 6 years, and I think it's the best on the market. I like stories by Peter Rand. I think he is a wingding. Give us more like that dark writer. I don't write many letters. Just thought I would tell you I think your mag is the best dimes worth I ever spent. Slim looked up questionably. What do you want me to read that for? Wit said. Go on, read the name at the bottom, Slim read. Yours for success, William Tanner. He glanced up at Whit again. What do you want me to read that for? Whit closed the magazine impressively. Don't you remember Bill Tanner? Worked here about 3 months ago? Slim thought. Little guy? Yes. Drove a cultivator? That's him, Whit cried. That's the guy. You think he's the guy that wrote this letter? I know it. Bill and me was in here one day. Bill had one of them books that just come home. He was looking in it and he says, I wrote a letter. Wonder if they put it in the book. But it wasn't there. Bill says, maybe they're saving it for later. And that's just what they done. There it is. Guess you're right, says Slim. Got it right here in the book. George held his hand for the magazine. Let's look at it. Whit found the place again, but he did not surrender his hold on it. He pointed out the letter with his forefinger, and then he went to the box shelf and laid the magazines carefully in. I wonder if Bill's seen it, he said. Bill and me worked in that pitch of field peas, run cultivators, both of us. Bill was hell of a nice fella. During the conversation, Carlson had refused to draw in. He continued to look down at the old dog. Kenny watched him uneasily. At last, Carlson said, if you want me to, I'll put the old devil out of his misery right now and get it over with. And nothing left for him. Can't eat, can't see, can't even walk without hurting. Candy said, hopefully. You ain't got no gun. The hell I ain't got a Luger. It won't hurt him none at all. Candy said, maybe tomorrow. Let's wait till tomorrow. I don't see no reason for it, said Carlson. He went to his bunk. Pulled his bag from underneath and took out a Luger pistol. Let's get it over with, he said. We can't sleep with them stinking around in here. He put his pistol in his hip pocket. Candy looked a long time at Slim to try to find some reversal, and Slim gave him none. At least Candy said softly and hopelessly, all right, take him. He did not look down at the dog at all. He lay back on his bunk and crossed his arms behind his head and stared at the ceiling. From his pocket, Carlson took a little leather thong. He stooped over and tied it around the old dog's neck. All the men except Candy watched him. Come on, boy, he said gently, and he said it apologetically to Candy. He won't even feel it. Candy did not move nor answer. He twitched the thong. Come on, boy. The old dog got slowly and stiffly to his feet and followed the gently pulling leash. Slim said, Carlson, yeah, you know what to do? What do you mean, Slim? Take your shovel, said Slim shortly. Oh, sure, I get you. He led the dog out into the darkness. George followed to the door and shut the door and set the latch gently in its place. Candy lay rigidly on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Slim said loudly, one of my leading mules got a bad hoof. Got to get some tar on it. His voice trailed off. It was silent outside. Carlson's footsteps died away. The silence came in the room, and the silence lasted. George chuckled. I bet Lenny's right out there in the barn with his pup. He won't want to come in here no more. Now he's got a pup. Slim said, Candy, you can even have one of them pups you want. Candy did not answer. The silence fell on the room again. He came out of the night and invaded the room. George said, anybody like to play a little euchre? I play out a few with you, said Whit. They took places opposite each other at the table under the light, but George did not shuffle the cards. He rippled the edge of the deck nervously, and the little snapping noise drew the eyes of all the men in the room so that he stopped doing it. The silence fell in the room again. A minute passed, and another minute. Kenny lay still, staring at the ceiling. Slim gazed at him for a moment and then looked down at his hands. He subdued one hand with the other and held it down. There came a little gnawing sound from under the floor, and all the men looked down toward it gratefully. Only Kenny continued to stare at the ceiling. Sounds like there was a rat under there, said George. We ought to get the trap down there. Whit broke out. What the hell's taking him so long? Lay out some cards, why don't you? We ain't going to get no euchre played this way. George brought the cards together tightly and studied the backs of them. The silence was in the room again. A shot sounded in the distance. The men looked quickly at the old man, every head turned toward him. For a moment he continued to stare at the ceiling, then he rolled slowly over and faced the wall and lay silent. George shuffled the cards noisily and dealt them. Whit drew a scoring board to him and set the pegs to start. Whit said, I guess you guys really come here to work. How do you mean? George asked. We laughed. Well, you come on Friday, you got 2 days to work till Sunday. I don't see how you figure, said George. Whit laughed again. You do if you've been around these big ranches much. Guy that wants to look over a ranch comes in Saturday morning, afternoon. He gets Saturday night supper and 3 meals on Sunday, and he can quit Monday morning after breakfast without turning his hand. But you come to work Friday noon, you got put in a day and a half no matter how you figure. George looked at him levelly. We're going to stick around a while, he said. Me and Lenny's going to roll up a steak. The door opened quietly, and the stable buck put in his head. A lean Negro head lined with pain, the eyes patient. Mr. Slim took his eyes from old Candy. Huh? Oh. Hello, Crooks. What's the matter? You told me to warm up tar for the mule's foot. I got it warm. Oh, sure, Crooks. I come right out and put it on. I can do it if you want, Mr. Slim. No, I'll come do it myself, he stood up. Crooks said, Mr. Slim, yeah. That big new guy's messing around your pups out in the barn. Well, he ain't doing no harm. I give him one of them pups. Just thought I'd tell you, said Crooks. He's taking them out the nest and handling them. That won't do them no good. He won't hurt him, said Slim. I'll come along with you now. George looked up. If that crazy bastard's fooling around too much, just kick him out, Slim. Slim followed the stable buck out of the room. George Doubt and Whit picked up his cards and examined them. Seen the new kid yet? He asked. What kid? George asked. Why, Curdy's new wife. Yeah, I seen her. Well, ain't she a Lulu? I ain't seen that much of her, said George. Whit laid down his cards impressively. Well, stick around and keep your eyes open. You'll see plenty. She ain't concealing nothing. I never seen nobody like her. She got the eye going all the time on everybody. I bet she even gives the stable buck the eye. I don't know what the hell she wants. George asked casually. Been any trouble since she got here? It was obvious that Whit was not interested in his cards. He lay his hand down and George scooped it in. George laid out his deliberate solitaire hand, 7 cards and 6 on top and 5 on top of those. Whit said, I see what you mean. Oh, there ain't been nothing yet. Curly's got yellow jackets in his drawers, but that's all so far. Every time the guy's around, she shows up. She's looking for Curly, or she thought she left something laying around and she's looking for it. Seems like she can't get away from guys, and Curly's pants is just crawling with ants, but there ain't nothing come of it yet. George said, she's gonna make a mess. They're gonna be a bad mess about her. She's a jailbait all set on the trigger that Curly got his work cut out for him. Ranch with a bunch of guys on it. Ain't no place for a girl, especially like her. Whit said, if you got ideas, you ought to come in town with us guys tomorrow night. Why, what's doing? Just the usual thing. We go into old Susie's place. Hell of a nice place. Old Susie laugh. Susie's a laugh, always cracking jokes like she says when we come up on the front porch last Saturday night. Susie opens the door and then she yells over her shoulder, get your coats on, girls. Here comes the sheriff. She never talks dirty neither. Got 5 girls there. What's it say you bag? George asked. 2.5. You can get shot for 2 bits. Susie got nice chairs to sit in too. If a guy don't want to flock, why, he can just sit in chairs and have a couple or 3 shots and pass the time of day, and Susie don't give a damn. She ain't rushing guys through and kicking them out if they don't want to flop. Might go in and look the joint over, said George. Sure, come along. It's a hell of a lot of fun. Her cracking jokes all the time. Like she said one time, she said, I knew people that if they got a rag rug on the floor and a Kewpie doll lamp on the phonograph, they think they're running a parlor house. That's Clara's house she's talking about. And Susie says, I know what you boys want. She says, my girls is clean. She says, and there ain't no water in my whiskey. She says, if any of you guys want to look at Kewpie doll lamp and take your own chance getting burned, well, you know where to go. And she says, there's guys around here walking bow-legged because they, too, look at Kewpie doll lamp. Because they like to look at Kewpie doll lamp. George asked, Clara runs the other house, huh? Yeah, I said, Whit, we don't never go there. Clara gets $3 a crack and 35 cents a shot. And she don't crack no jokes, but Susie's place is clean. She got nice chairs, don't let no goo-goos in neither. Me and Lenny rolling up a steak, said George. I might go in and sit and have a shot, but I ain't putting out not 2.5. Well, the guys got to have some fun sometimes, said Whit. The door opened and Lenny and Carlson come in together. Lenny crept to his bunk and sat down, trying not to attract attention. Carlson reached under his bunk and brought out his bag. He didn't look at old Candy, and he didn't look at old Candy, who still faced the wall. Carlson found a little cleaning rod in the bag and can of oil. He laid them on his bed and then brought out the pistol, took out the magazine, and snapped the loaded shell from the chamber. Then he fell to cleaning the barrel with the little rod. When the ejector snapped, Kenny turned over and looked for a moment at the gun before he turned back to the wall again. Carlson casually, Curly been in yet? No, said Whit. What's eating on Curly? Carlson squinted down the barrel of his gun, looking for his old lady. I seen him going around and around outside. Whit said sarcastically, he spends half his time looking for her and the rest of his time she's looking for him. Curly burst into the room excitedly. And you guys see my wife in a minute. She ain't been here, said Whit. Curly looked threatening about the room. Where the hell's Slim? Went out into the barn, said George. He was gonna put some tar on the split hoof. Curly's shoulders dropped and squatted. How long ago he go? 5, 10 minutes. Curly jumped out the door and banged it after him. Whit stood up. I guess maybe I'd like to see this. He said, Curly just spoiling or he wouldn't start for Slim. Curly just spoiling or he wouldn't start for Slim. And Curly's handy. Goddamn handy. Got in the finals for the Golden Gloves. He got newspaper clippings about it, he considered. But just the same, you better leave Slim alone. Nobody don't know what Slim can do. Think Slim's with his wife, don't he? Said George. Looks like he would, said. Of course Slim, man. At least I don't think Slim is, but I like to see the fuss if it comes off. Come on, let's go. George said, I'm staying right here. I don't want to get mixed up in nothing. Lenny and me got to make a steak. Carlson finished the cleaning of the gun and put it in the bag and pushed the bag under his bunk. I guess I'll go out and look her over. He said, old Candy lay still. And Lenny, from his bunk, watched George cautiously. Also, Carlson's going to go. And then said, old Candy, he's still in bed. Lenny in his bunk. And George watched cautiously. When Whit and Carlson were gone and the door closed after them, George turned to Lenny. What you got on your mind? I ain't done nothing, George. Slim says, I better not put them pups so much for a while. Better not pet them pups. Slim says, I better not pet them pups so much for a while. Slim says it ain't good for them, so I come right in. I've been good, George. I could have told you that, said George. Well, I wasn't hurting them. No, I just had mine in my lap petting. George asked, did you see Slim out in the barn? Sure I did. He told me I better not pet that pup no more. Did you see the girl? You mean Curly's girl? Yeah. Did she come in the barn? No, anyway, I'd never seen her. You never seen Slim talking to her? She ain't been in the barn. Okay, said George. I guess them guys ain't gonna see no fight. If there's any fighting, Lenny, you keep out of it. I don't want no fight, said Lenny. He got up from his bunk and sat down at the table across from George. Almost automatically, George shuffled the cards and laid out his solitaire hand. He was a deliberate, thoughtful slowness. Then he reached for a face card and studied it, then turned it upside down and studied it. Both ends the same, he said, George. George, why is both ends the same? I don't know, said George. That's just the way they make them. What was Slim doing in the barn when you seen him, Slim? Sure, you seen him in the barn and he told you not to pet them pups so much. Oh yeah, he had a can of tar and a paintbrush. I don't know what for. You sure that girl didn't come in like she come in here today? No, she never comes, George sighed. You give me a good whorehouse every time, he said. A guy can go in and get drunk and get everything out of his system all at once and no messes, and he knows how much they're gonna set him back. These here jail baits is just on the trigger of the goose gal. Of the hoosgow, Hoosegw. Then he followed his words admiringly and moved his lips a little to keep up. George continued, you remember Andy Cushman, Lenny? Went to grammar school. The one that his old lady used to make hotcakes for the kids, Lenny asked. Yeah, that's the one. You can remember anything if there's anything to eat in it. George looked carefully at the solitaire hand. He put an ace up on his scoring rack and piled a 2, 3 and 4 of diamonds on it. Andy's in San Quentin right now on account of a tart, said George. Then he drummed on the table with his fingers. George? Huh? George, how long is it going to be till we get that little place and live on the fat of the land and rabbits? I don't know, said George. We got to get a big steak together. I know a little place we can get cheap, but they ain't giving it away. O'Canny turned slowly over. His eyes were wide. He watched George carefully. Then he said, tell about that place, George. I just told you just last night. Go on, tell again, George. Well, it's 10 acres, said George. Got a little windmill, got a little shack on it, and a chicken run. Got a kitchen, orchard, cherries, apples, peaches, cots, nuts. Got a few berries. There's a place for alfalfa and plenty of water to flood in it. There's a pig pen and rabbits, George. No place for rabbits now, but I could easily build a few hutches and you could, you could feed alfalfa to the rabbits. Damn right I could, said Lenny. You goddamn right I could. George's hand stopped working with the cars. His voice was growing warmer. And we could have a few pigs. I could build a smokehouse like the one Grandpa had. And when we kill a pig, we can smoke the bacon and the hams and make sausage and all like that. And when the salmon run up the river, we could catch 100 of them and salt them down and smoke them. We could have them for breakfast. Ain't nothing so nice as smoked salmon. When the fruit come in, we could can it. And, tomatoes are easy. They're easy to can, Every Sunday we'd kill a chicken or a rabbit. Maybe we'd have a cow or a goat. And the cream is so goddamn thick, you got to cut it with a knife. And you just take it out the spoon. Then he watched him with wide eyes, and old Candy watched him too. And then he said softly, we could live off of the fat of the land. Sure, said George, all kinds of vegetable and a garden. We could, we want a little whiskey. We can sell a few eggs or something or some milk. We just live there. We belong there, There wouldn't be no more running around the country and getting fed by a Jap cook. No, sir, we'd have our own place where we belong and not sleep in no bunkhouse. Tell about the house, George, Lenny begged. Sure, we'd have a little house and a room to ourselves, a little fat iron stove, and in the winter we keep a fire going, and it ain't enough land, so we'd have to work too hard, maybe 6-7 hours a day. We wouldn't have to buck no barley 11 hours a day, and when we put in the crop, why shit, we ready to take the crop up. We know what coming of our planting, And rabbits, then he said eagerly, and I take care of them. Tell them how I do it, George. Sure, you go out in an alfalfa patch and you have a sack. You fill up the sack, bring it in and put it in the rabbits' cages. They nibble and they nibble, said Lenny, the way they do, I seen them. Every 6 weeks or so, George continued, then does would throw a litter, so we'd have plenty of rabbits to eat and to sell. We keep a few pigeons too, flying around the windmill like they done when I was a kid. He looked rapidly at the wall over, and then he said, and it'd be our own. Nobody could can us, If we don't like a guy, we can say, get the hell out, and by God, he's gotta do it, And if a friend come along, why, we'd have an extra bunk, and we'd say, why don't you spend the night? And by God, he would. We'd have a setter dog and a couple striped cats, but you gotta watch out, them cats don't get, they don't get the little rabbits. Then he breathed hard. You just let him try to get the rabbits. I'll break the goddamn necks out. I'll smash him with a stick. He subsided, grumbling to himself, threatening the future cats which might dare to disturb the future rabbits. George sat entranced with his own picture. When Kenny spoke, the both jumped as though they had been caught doing something reprehensible. Kenny said, where's a place like that? George was on guard immediately. Suppose I do, he said. What's that to you? You don't need to tell me where it's at. It might be any place. Sure, said George. That's right. You couldn't find it in 100 years. Kenny went on excitedly. How much they want for a place like that? George watched him suspiciously. Well, I could get it for $600. The old people that owns it, it is flat busted, and the old lady needs an operation. Say, what's it to you? You got nothing to do with this. Kenny said, I ain't much good with only one hand. I lost my right here on this ranch. That's why they give me a job swamping, and they give me $250 because I lost my hand, and I got 50 more saved up right in the bank right now. That's 300, and I got 50 more coming the end of the month. Tell you what, he leaned forward eagerly. Suppose I went in with you guys. That's $350 I put in. I ain't much good, but I could cook and tend the chickens and, work the garden some. How about that? I could hold the garden some. George half closed his eyes. I gotta think about that. We was always gonna do it ourselves. Kenny interrupted. I make a willing to leave my share to you guys in case I kick off, because I ain't got no relatives and no nothing. You guys got any money? Maybe we could do her right now. George spat on the floor disgustedly. We got $10 between us. Then he said thoughtfully, look, if me and Lenny work a month and don't spend nothing, we'll have $100. That'd be $450. I bet we could swing her for that. Then you and Lenny could get her started and I get a job and make up the rest, and you could sell eggs and stuff like that. They found to science. They looked at one another amazed. This thing they had never really believed in was coming true. George says reverently, Jesus Christ, I bet we could swing her. His eyes were full of wonder. I bet we could swing her, he repeated softly. Kenny sat on the edge of his bunk. He scratched the stump of his wrist nervously. I got hurt 4 years ago, he said. They'll count me pretty soon, just as soon as they can't swamp out no bunkhouses, they'll put me on the county. Maybe if I give you guys my money, you'll let me hoe in the garden even after I ain't no good at it. And I'll wash dishes and little chicken stuff like that. But it'll be on our own place, and I'll be let to work on our own place, he said miserably. You seen what they done to my dog tonight? They says he wasn't no good to himself nor anybody else. When they can me here, I wish somebody would show me. But they won't do nothing like that. I won't have no place to go, and I can't get no more jobs. I'll have $30 more coming time you guys is ready to quit. George stood up. We'll do her, he said. We'll fix her that little old place, and we'll go live there. He sat down again. They all sat still, all bemused by the beauty of the thing. Each mind was popped in the future when this lovely thing should come about. George said wonderingly, suppose there was a carnival or circus come to town, or a ball game or a damn thing. Or Kenny nodded in appreciation of the idea. We'll just go to hers, George said. We wouldn't ask nobody if we could. Just say, we'll go to her, and we would just milk the cow and sling some grain to the chickens and go to her. And put some grass to the rabbits. And then he broke in. I wouldn't never forget to feed them. When we gonna do it, George? In 1 month, right squack in 1 month. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to write to them old people that owns the place that will take it. And Kenny will send $100 to bind her. Sure will, said Kenny. They got a good stove there. Sure got a nice stove. Burns coal wood. I'm going to take my pup, said Lenny. I bet my Christ he'll like it there, by Jesus. Voices were approaching from outside, George said quickly. Don't tell nobody about it. Just us three and nobody else. They liable to can us so we can't make no stake. Just go on like we was going to buck Barty the rest of our lives, and all of a sudden someday we'll go get our pay and scram out of here. Lenny and Kenny nodded, and they were grinning with delight. Don't tell nobody, Lenny said to himself. Kenny said, George, I'd have shot that dog myself, George. I should not have let no stranger shoot my dog. The door opened. Slim came in, followed by Curly and Carlson and Whit. Slim's hands were black with tar, and he was scowling. Curly hung close to his elbow. Curly said, well, I didn't mean nothing, Slim. I just asked you. Slim said, well, you've been asking me too often. I'm getting goddamn sick of it. If you can't look after your own goddamn wife, what do you expect me to do about it? You lay off of me. I'm just trying to tell you I didn't mean nothing, said Curly. I just thought you might have saw her. Why ain't you tell her to stay the hell home where she belongs, said Carlson. You let her hang around bunkhouses, and pretty soon you're going to have something on your hands, and you won't be able to do nothing about it. Curly whirled on Carlson. You keep out of this unless you want to step outside. Carlson laughed. You goddamn punk. He said you tried to throw a scare into Slim and you couldn't make it stick. Slim threw a scare into you. You're yellow as a frog, but I don't care if you're the best welter in the country. You come for me and I'll kick your goddamn head off. Kenny joined the attack with joy. Glove full of Vaseline, he said disgustingly. So here we so Carlson laughed. You goddamn punk. Also Kenny jumped in. Glove full of Vaseline, he said disgustedly. Curly glared at him. His eyes slipped on past and lighted on Lenny. And Lenny was still smiling with delight at the memory of the ranch. Curly stepped over to Lenny like a terrier. What the hell you laughing at? Lenny looked blankly at him, huh? Then Curly's rage exploded. Come on, you big bastard. Get up on your feet. No big son of a bitch is gonna laugh at me. I'll show you who's hella yellow. Then he looked helplessly at George and then got up and tried to retreat. Curly was balanced and poised. He slashed at Lenny with his left and then smashed down his nose with the right. Lenny gave a cry of terror. Blood welled from his nose. George, he cried. Make him let me alone, George. He backed him until he was against the wall. Curly followed, slugging him in the face. Lenny's hands remained at his sides. He was too frightened to defend himself. George was on his feet yelling, get him, Lenny. Don't let him do it. Lenny covered his face and with huge paws and bleeded with terror. He cried, make him stop, George. And Curly attacked his stomach and cut off his wind. Slim jumped up. The dirty little rat, he cried, I'll get him myself. George put out his hand and grabbed Slim. Wait a minute, he shouted. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, get him, Lenny. George put out his hand and grabbed Slim. Wait a minute, he shouted. Lenny took his hands away from his face and looked about for George, and Curly slashed at his eyes. The big face was covered with blood. George yelled again. I said, get him. Curly's fist was swinging when Lenny reached for it. The next minute, Curly was flopping like a fish on a line, and his closed fist was lost in Lenny's big hand. George ran down the room. Let go of him, Lenny, let go. He just has his hand. But Lenny watched in terror the flopping little man whom he held. Blood ran down Lenny's face. One of his eyes was cut and closed. George slapped him in the face again and again, and still Lenny held on to the closed fist. Curly was white and shrunken by now, and his struggling had become weak. He stood crying, his fist lost in Lenny's paw. George shouted over and over, let go his hand, Lenny, let go, Slim. Slim, come help while the guy got any hand left. Let go, or let go, let his hand go, let go of his hand, Lenny, let go. Slim, come help me while the guy got any hand left. Suddenly, Lenny let go of his hold. He crouched, cowering against the wall. You told me to, George, he said miserably. Curly sat down on the floor, looking in wonder at his crushed hand. Slim and Carlson bent over him. Then Slim straightened up and regarded Lenny with horror. We got to get him into a doctor, he said. Looks to me like every bone in his hand busted. I didn't want to, Lenny cried. I didn't want to hurt him, Slim said. Carlson, you get the candy wagon hitched up. We'll take him to Soledad and get him fixed up. Carlson hurried out. Slim turned to the whimpering Lenny. It ain't your fault, he said. This punk sure had it coming on, but Jesus, he ain't hardly got no hand left. Slim hurried out and in a moment returned with a tin cup of water. He held it to Curly's lips. George said, Slim, will we get canned now? We need the steak. Will Curly's old man can us now? Slim smiled wryly. He knelt down beside Curly. You got your senses in hand enough to listen, he asked. Curly nodded. Well, then listen, Slim went on. I think you got your hand caught in the machine if you don't tell nobody what happened. We ain't going to. But you just tell and try to get this guy canned, and we'll tell everybody, and then will you get the laugh? And then will you get the laugh? Okay, but you just tell and try to get this guy canned, and we'll tell everybody, and then will you get the laugh? I won't tell, said Curly. He avoided looking at Lenny. Buggy wheels sounded outside. Slim helped Curly up. Come on now. Carlson's going to take you to a doctor. He helped Curly out the door. The sound of wheels drew away. In a moment, Slim came back into the bunkhouse. He looked at Lenny, still crouched fearfully against the wall. Let's see your hands, he asked. Lenny struck out his hands. Christ almighty, I hate to have you mad at me, Slim said. George broke in. Lenny was just scared, he explained. He didn't know what to do. I told nobody ought never to fight him. No, I guess it was Candy I told. Candy nodded solemnly. That's just what you done, he said. Right this morning when Curly fist lit into your friend, he says, you better not fool with Lenny if he knows what's good for him. That's just what he says to me. Right this morning when Curly first lit until your friend, he says. That's just what he says to me. George turned to Lenny. It ain't your fault. He said, you don't need to be scared no more. You done just what I told you to do. Maybe you better go in the washroom and clean your face. You look like hell. Then he smiled with his bruised mouth. I don't want no trouble, he said. He walked toward the door, but just before he came to it, he turned back. George, what do you want? I can still tend the rabbits, George. Sure, you ain't done nothing wrong. I didn't mean no harm, George. Well, get the hell out and wash your face. All right, y'all. Peace.